Shalom, family, and Shemani Liar, and as usual, I'm a wise, wealthy, rich, celestial being that is loved by the Most High Creator. Family, you see in the corner, we got the Essential ZOHAR. My mom keeps asking me, to go back and read chapter, it's a chapter on immortality. I read the book, but you know, as I read, I usually read fast, and this wasn't exactly a book I was going to try to teach out of, but she keep asking me to read it. It's chapter 25 on immortality in this book, so we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna read it, and then I'll see how I feel at the end. Maybe I might do some commentary like I've been doing lately. I'll just read the chapter, and then I'll go back and give my commentary afterwards. But we'll see how I feel. But I'm gonna go ahead and just read the whole chapter, and then we'll see how I feel afterwards. So. Chapter 25, immortality. That's what we're reading right here. Out of the source of Kabbalistic wisdom, the Zohar. Here we go. In scientific research, a distinction is sometimes made between hard and soft versions of an idea or hypothesis. Physicists, for example, refer to hard and soft interpretations of the so-called anthropic principle, which deals with the relationship between life, consciousness, and physical reality. The soft version asserts that life and consciousness came into being because the universe is precisely calibrated to make this possible. The hard version turns this on its head. Consciousness itself brought the universe into being, rather than the other way around. A similar hard-soft distinction exist in spiritual matters, and this is especially clear in regard to immortality. Most religions, and even many secular thinkers, profess belief in some form of existence after death. A soft version of this belief might assert that we live on in the memories of our survivors, or in the lasting effects of the good and bad actions we performed in the world. A harder approach might suggest that our souls survive the death of the physical body, that they continue to exist in another dimension, and perhaps even participate in the world in some disembodied form. But only the hardest version of immortality would suggest that even our physical bodies and our individual identities can live forever. This, in fact, is exactly what Kabbalah teaches. This most revolutionary transformation will come about through a combination of scientific and spiritual breakthroughs. Although the distinction between these two categories is rapidly breaking down, near-death experiences, for example, have received the attention of both physicians and clergy, calling on each other to help explain the phenomenon that essentially mystifies both camps. It is a fact, however, that in modern hospitals, patients who have been declared clinically dead actually return to life. It is also a fact that we have been conditioned to doubt this, or to soften our interpretation by what we have been told is a scientific view of what is possible and what is not. This conditioning towards doubt had been going on for a very long time. It began in the Garden of Eden, and our first instructor in the limits of possibility was none other than the serpent himself. One of Kabbalah's most important teachings states that negative thoughts are the origin of chaos in our lives. And of all negative thoughts, doubt may be the deadliest. Kabbalah teaches that chaos and death, which is the supreme manifestation of chaos, are illusions fostered by doubt, which creates an opening for negative energy. More specifically, doubt is a questioning of the efficiency or the existence of the spiritual system. It is doubt of oneself and of one's own ability to reveal light. While we still existed under the influence of tree of life consciousness, before the serpent instigated the tasting of the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, death did not exist. Humanity had no connection with mortality consciousness. But once the fruit was eaten, uncertainty entered the picture. That is, we now doubt that we would live forever. And consequently, we do not live forever. It is the doubt itself that brought us the seeming reality of death. When humanity is at last transformed, all chaos, including death, will cease to exist. These burdens will evanescence, like the Cheshire cat, vanishing into thin air. To new students of Kabbalah, this must surely seem a radical assertion, and perhaps even an incredible one. Let us, therefore, look more closely at Kabbalah's explanation of exactly how chaos and death become a presence in our lives, and how they can be erased. When a new life comes into being as a fertilized egg in the womb, this quite obviously represents the beginning of a process, but it is also the completion of a prior chain of events. Male and female energies have joined to form a single cell that encompasses both elements. In this state of wholeness, Kabbalah teaches that the cell is absolutely safe from negative influence. Moreover, surrounded by amniotic fluid, it is protected yet again in accordance with the Kabbalistic teaching that immersion in water provides a shield that chaos cannot penetrate. This condition of utter invulnerability is short-lived, however. The growth process begins and new cells become differentiated as organs, connective tissues, or thousands of other possibilities. Differentiation, of course, is a necessary and positive development, but it also represents a loss of completeness that characterized the human cell in its undifferentiated form. By its very nature, the growth of the organism brings about openings in the once impenetrable shield, and when birth brings departure from the immersion within the womb, that protection is lost as well. As life goes on, our loss of wholeness continues apace, and not always as a concomitant of healthy growth. Openings for negativity are created every minute of every day. This is the nature of the world in which we live and the people we have become. It is also the cause of illness, aging, and death, and it has a fundamentally spiritual basis. The spiritual foundation of the body's deterioration and disease underlies all biomechanical and all biochemical processes. These processes are effects, although they are often mistaken for causes. Let me be more specific. When an action or thought affects another human being negatively, the person responsible for that effect increases the quantity of negative entities that are drawn towards his or her own being. Indeed, the responsible person alone created those entities. When we focus destructive energy on others, we bring into being the means of our own self-destruction. Nor is there any shield against these entities, since they are of our own making. They gain entrance to our innermost being as easily as a robber to whom we have handed our house keys. Fortunately, the reverse of this process is also true. By using the tools of Kabbalah, and most especially the Zohar, we create positive forces whose very existence is inimical to the presence of negativity. Just as light is inimical to darkness, the spiritual tools of Kabbalah are not just a defense mechanism. They are a means of rebirth or even pre-birth, a way of returning to the undifferentiated state that for the individual is analogous to the tree of life, reality for humanity as a whole. If we find this difficult to accept, it is only because a materialist mechanist definition of reality has limited our sense of what is possible. But these limiting thoughts are the work of our adversary, the angel of doubt. Know your opponent. The teachings of Kabbalah are a way of life, encompassing action, feeling, and especially thought, which the Zohar particularly emphasizes. Misfortune, illness, and death can never be understood independently of the thoughts that were their seeds. In our minds and souls, we have the power to heal and the power to remain well. We also have the power to achieve immortality. Regardless of what the angel of doubt would have you believe, physical immortality is a reality today, just as it was in the garden. If immortality seems unavailable, it is because we have detached from the consciousness of infinity and become full citizens of the mundane. Here again, the insights of science can be useful. In 1924, the great physicist Niels Bohr described a principle that he called complementarity. Bohr stated that when a phenomenon is observed in a particular way, the means of observation that reveals certain truths about the phenomena can obscure other truths. The classic example is an experiment on the nature of light, in which the light's properties properties as a particle renders its waves properties invisible, and vice versa. If we think of our five senses as an experimental apparatus, the complementarity principle tells us that what we see is what we get, but there is more to be gotten that we don't see. In a similar way, the exclusionary principle described by Wolfgang Pauli in 1925 teaches that no two electrons in an atom can occupy the same energy state simultaneously. Pauli further believed that the principle can be extended to systems much larger than the atom. From a kabbalistic perspective, I infer from this that the tree of life reality cannot coexist with the world we now live in, just as a room cannot be filled with light and darkness at the same time. Indeed, the dimension of the tree of life cannot even be perceived without a fundamental shift in our perception and in the hidden expectations or doubts that exist within them. We do not see immortality because we have focused our awareness elsewhere. As the physicists tell us, consciousness appropriate to a dimension of reality is the prerequisite for accessing that dimension. Therefore, immortality consciousness is essential for understanding how immortality can be attained and for acting on that understanding. Man was created on the sixth day. Why was this very important creation saved for last? It is because humanity is the culmination of all that came before, not only in the world as we know it, but in the universe as a whole. Kabbalah teaches that the universe is literally the extended body of humankind, a holographic representation of ourselves. Just as the human body consists of members and parts that form a single organism, so does the world at large consist of a hierarchy of created things, which act and react together to form an organic whole. We are the blueprint of the entire cosmos, as well as participants in it. Nor are we only participants. Humanity was endowed by the Creator with the power to influence and determine the very nature of the universe, from the quantum level to the birth and death of stars. The instrument of this great power is nothing more than our consciousness and our realization. Hold on, let me read that again. The instrument of this great power is nothing more than our consciousness and our realization of the capabilities that are within our grasp. Kabbalah teaches that our thoughts, feelings, and especially our spiritual awareness determine events in the external environment. What takes place in our minds and hearts is the ground state of the physical realm. This view, it is interesting to note, is also expressed. What takes place in our minds and hearts is the ground state of the physical realm. This view, it is interesting to note, is also expressed in the so-called Copenhagen interpretation theory of quantum mechanics, as articulated by Niels Bohr. Bohr's ideas also erase the clear-cut division between events, physical objects, and human consciousness. At the most basic level, what is observed cannot escape being influenced by whoever is observing. In fact, in the absence of an observer, what we think of as immutable physical reality does not even exist. The Zohar depicts humankind as an essentially spiritual entity whose fate is determined by the nature of our own thoughts and actions. That is to say, It is all up to us. Only human beings have the power of free will in determining their spiritual evolution, which in turn is the controlling energy of their physical and material well-being. The fundamental interconnection of consciousness and creation is the very essence of the Zoharic worldview. To perceive and embrace this unity is to experience the true spirit of Kabbalah. Hold on, let me read that again. The fundamental interconnection of consciousness and creation is the very essence of the Zoharic worldview. To perceive and embrace this unity is to experience the true spirit of Kabbalah. Kabbalah teaches that even the most basic foundations of the physical world have their origins in the metaphysical or spiritual dimension. This requires us to think of life and death in terms that perhaps cannot be quantified or measured by technological means, but that have their own kind of validity and reality. This requires us to think of life and death in terms that perhaps cannot be quantified or measured by technological means, but that have their own kind of validity and reality. From this perspective, death is the offspring of aspects of the physical dimension, such as gravity and entropy, as described by Maxwell's second law of thermodynamics. The Kabbalists tell us that the origin of these seemingly immutable forces is nothing more than the desire to receive for the self alone. When self-directed desire is transformed into desire to receive for the sake of sharing, both gravity and entropy will cease to exist, along with the limitation of time, space, and matter itself. Kabbalah is very clear about this. The only reason that aging, pain, and death are part of human experience is the control over the material universe exerted by the desire for ourselves alone. When that control is eliminated, all those realities will be erased. Many centuries ago, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai wrote that 2,000 years would pass before the raising of human consciousness to a new level of awareness would become possible. That moment has finally arrived. A global transformation from greed to sharing is taking place as never before. When a critical mass of the world's people participates in this transformation, immortality will become a reality. As these immense changes take place, the spiritual tools of Kabbalah can help us to strengthen the consciousness of immortality, as well as to understand its connection to the primordial events of the Genesis story. Specifically, the Zohar takes up the theme of immortality in a discussion of Adam's progeny. Let me read that again, family. As these immense changes take place, these spiritual tools of Kabbalah can help us to strengthen the consciousness of immortality, as well as to understand its connection to the primordial events of the Genesis story. Specifically, the Zohar takes up the theme of immortality in a discussion of Adam's progeny. And this says, Volume 2, page 293 through 295. This is basically, anyway, let's keep going. Let me show you what it's showing. What I was reading right now, this is Volume 2, right there. There you go. That's what I was reading. Okay. If Adam had brought generations with him from Eden, they all would have lived forever, and not even the angels above could have stood before them and borne their brilliance and wisdom, and the light of the moon would never have been darkened. As it is written, in the image of Elohim did he create him. Genesis 1:27. But because Adam was the cause of sin, he had to leave Eden and bear children outside. Therefore his generations did not last. Rabbi Chizkiah asked, Rabbi Chizkiah asked, how could they have begotten offspring in Eden? Had the evil inclination, that is, the desire to receive for the self alone, which is inherent to the physical body, not been drawn down on him and enticed him to sin? he would have dwelled alone in the world and not begotten any offspring. Rabbi Abba answered, had Adam not sinned, he would not have borne offspring from the side of the evil inclination, but he would have borne them from the side of the light. But because he produced offspring only from the side of the evil inclination, all the offspring of mankind, who are the sons of Adam, are also from the side of the evil inclination. They have no permanent existence, because the other side has been mixed with them. They have no permanent existence, because the other side has been mixed with them. Consider the fall of Adam. It occurred in paradise, in the Garden of Eden. What kind of people were fit to live in paradise? What level of souls would be the eternal What level of souls would be the eternal correlative of a perfect external environment? Quite logically, the answer is perfect souls, which is what Adam and Eve were at the time of their creation. Not perfect in the sense of pristinely delicate, like a porcelain cup or a Swiss watch, but perfect in the exact harmony between what was in Adam's heart and what surrounded his body. There was congruence. There was equilibrium. There was unity. Hold on, let me read that again, family. Not perfect in the sense of pristinely delicate, like a porcelain cup or Swiss watch, but perfect in the exact harmony between what was in Adam's heart and what surrounded his body. There was congruence. There was equilibrium. There was unity. So far, this is the version of Adam and Eve in the garden as presented in the Bible and the Talmudic commentaries. Kabbalah is a coded description of metaphysical forces at work. Adam and Eve are not just two people. They are a metaphor for the primordial vessel whose existence preceded creation. They are a metaphor for the primordial vessel whose existence preceded creation, just as all the colors of the spectrum existed within a single beam of sunlight. The vessel encompassed all matter, space, time, and consciousness, and all the souls of humankind were also present in the vessel. As we discussed in chapter 5, the light of desire, the vessel shattered because of a contradiction in its nature. It had been created only to receive, but in being filled with the Creator's light, it has also received and taken on a degree of the Creator's own nature, the desire to share. All of our existence now is predicted on the goal of transforming this duality into a single desire, the desire to receive for the sake of sharing, in order to be able to finally reconnect with the Creator and receive the fullness of His light. This can happen in only one way. The shards of the shattered vessel, you and I, must choose to make it happen. We must choose. This can happen in only one way. The shards of the shattered vessel, you and I, must choose to make it happen. We must choose of our own free will to transform ourselves into beings of sharing, as the Kabbalists say, first on an individual level and ultimately as a collective transformation of all humankind. Not even God can do this for us. Transformation is the supreme expression and the only expression of free will. It is the choice we make in every thought. Hold on, let me read that again. Not even God can do this for us. Transformation is the supreme expression and the only expression of free will. It is the choice we make in every thought, feeling, and action. Adam and Eve faced this choice in the garden. They chose wrongly, but as we will see, their intentions were good. No question in spirituality has ignited more evil behavior than the nature of evil itself. Wars have been fought and crusades have been mounted over how evil came into being and why it persists. Does it stand as an autonomous force separate and opposite to God? Or does evil, like everything else, come from God and even serve him in accordance with its nature? Kabbalah takes the later position. It is evil represented by the serpent in the... Kabbalah takes the latter position. It is evil represented by the serpent in the Genesis story that makes the choice of good possible. Kabbalah takes the latter position. It is evil represented by the serpent in the Genesis story that makes the choice of good possible. The allure of evil also makes that choice more difficult and therefore more worthy. Evil in its way, therefore, serves the Creator. Indeed, by understanding this, we can free ourselves from its temptations. A parable in the Zohar dramatizes this teaching. A king forbade his son to consort with harlots, but then he hired a harlot to test the strength of his son's character. The son was tempted until he realized that the harlot was acting in the service of his father. She then lost all her power over him. The serpent in the garden acting in the service of our Father is essential to our final transformation, but he certainly doesn't make it any easier. At the time of his fateful encounter with Adam and Eve at the tree of knowledge, their state of being was fundamentally different from what ours is now. They embodied the pure energy of desire, and Kabbalah teaches that desire is inherently a positive force. While the conventional view of our first ancestors portrays them as transgressors, the Kabbalists point out that their motivation was to serve God. The serpent understood this also. In fact, he used their positive intentions to manipulate them for his own ends. He fostered the transformation of their pure, undifferentiated desire into desire to receive for themselves alone. He fostered the transformation of their pure, undifferentiated desire into desire to receive for themselves alone. Genesis chapter 3 verse 4. And the serpent said to the woman, "You are not going to die, but God knows that as soon as you eat of the tree, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like divine beings who know good and bad." Much Kabbalist teaching underlies the serpent's pronouncement. Much Kabbalistic teaching underlies the serpent's pronouncement. He refers to the fact that the Creator has obscured himself. The light, that is, has created distance between itself and us. We seem to exist in darkness, as if our eyes were closed. By eating the fruit, the serpent suggests Adam and Eve's eyes will be opened. They will reconnect with the light. In fact, they will become light, like divine beings. Is this not, after all, what the Creator wants us to do? So it seemed to Adam and Eve, and the serpent reassures them that connection they are about to create with the light will be an act of sharing in God's intention. And it was, at least at first. But here Kabbalah takes the biblical narrative in a radical new direction, because Adam and Eve were not fully constituted to receive the light, because the vessel had not yet earned an unmediated connection. They were overwhelmed by the moment in the same way that a weak electrical circuit will flash brightly and then burn out at the sudden infusion of a powerful current. The Kabbalist literalized this principle through a startling addition to the narrative. Adam and Eve took a second bite. In the eternal, the Kabbalist literalized this principle through a startling addition to the narrative. Adam and Eve took a second bite. In the interval, a fundamental transformation had taken place, but not the positive one that had been envisioned. Rather, their desire had lost its sharing intention and had become self-serving. They were farther than ever from unity with the nature of God. And this is exactly what the serpent had intended. It is essential to understand, however, that this impasses is also an opportunity. By traversing it, we can truly prepare the vessel. we can earn the light. We can receive it and take fulfillment in it. Let me read that again. I know I was horrible right there. Hold on. They were farther than ever from unity with the nature of God. And this is exactly what the serpent had intended. It is essential to understand, however, that this impasse is also an opportunity. By traversing it, we can truly prepare the vessel. We can earn the light. We can receive it and take fulfillment in it. Most important, we can share it. Desire itself came into being for the sole purpose of drawing down the endless light of the Creator, whose essence is the sharing of itself. In our world, desire is all too often for ourselves alone, without any thought of sharing. When the desire to receive for the self alone dominates consciousness without any restraint, a disconnection occurs. Through selfish acts and thoughts, we become isolated from the Creator and from the source of spiritual nourishment. Only the ephemeral pleasures remain without the everlasting joy of the light. As we read in the Talmud, he who desires money will not be satisfied with money, nor were Adam and Eve satisfied by the fruit of the tree of knowledge. This is Kabbalah's interpretation of what might be called the basics of the Genesis narrative. But as the preceding Zohar passages indicate, this is only the starting point. We have spoken of Adam and Eve as a couple, but until the second bite of the fruit, they were not separate at the spiritual level. This detachment took place at the same instant that the divide widened between the vessel and the light. Where there had been unity and equilibrium, there was now dissimilarity and fragmentation. Where there had been eternal existence in paradise, there was now mortal life in the physical world. This last change requires some explanation. Immortality before the fall was not just living forever. It was immortality consciousness, freedom from what the Zohar calls the evil inclination that brings not only death to humanity, but also all other forms of pain and suffering. After the fall, immortality consciousness was gone, replaced by consciousness, a knowledge of death and evil that instantly expressed itself in the physical dimension of life. But despite all this, the plain fact of immortality remained untouched, in the same way that the signal that carries a television program remains in the air even after the set has been turned off. With the fall of Adam, the bad news is that we stopped receiving the program, but we also began the process of repairing the receiving mechanism and getting it turned in again. This correction, this tikkun is our task for however many years it requires and however many lifetimes. When an individual human being truly completes this process, immortality is restored as consciousness, surely, and on the level of the physical body as well. Let me read that again. When an individual human being truly completes this process, immortality is restored as consciousness, surely, and on the level of the physical body as well. It is worth repeating that all humanity makes collective progress toward this objective. A critical mass of corrected souls will eventually be achieved. This will again tip the balance toward the immortality that existed before the fall, and we will reconnect with that reality. But this time, when we enter paradise, there will be an important difference. We will have earned it. We will have chosen it of our own free will. We will have overcome the obstacles that we ourselves brought into being at the time of the fall. And through that struggle, we will have made ourselves worthy. It is an inspiring picture. But for the moment, we should address a very straightforward question. Is Kabbalah declaring that someone, or perhaps anyone, can literally escape death owing to a transformation of his or her soul? The short answer is yes, but very few people achieve this level of transformation. Immortality consciousness involves much more than just changing the way we think and feel about death. In fact, it is unlikely that the great souls who achieved immortality consciousness gave much thought to death at all. But even if we do not achieve the level of spiritual elevation attained by Moses or Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, immortality is a presence in our lives in the sense that the Zohar discusses. Even as death became part of human experience, when Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, the process of conquering death also became a reality. Ultimately, the Kabbalists explain it is inevitable that this conquest will be realized, including our body's physical survival. Even now, death is being conquered on the cellular level. Science and Kabbalah are in accord regarding the immortality of DNA, and in many respects, their teachings are strikingly similar. For example, Rav Yehuda Ashlag taught that our reproductive power of the human species as a whole represents the expression of primordial immortality in the physical world. Rabbi Ashlag wrote, "No man lives for himself, but only for the chain as a whole. No part of the chain actually receives the light of immortality into itself, but it only transmits this light of life to the whole chain. This is perfectly congruent with an influential theory of genetic biology articulated for general readers by Richard Dawkins in his book, The Selfish Gene. Dawkins describes life as a kind of perpetual motion machine, designed at the cellular level to persist forever, paying the mortgage, having a good dinner, waiting for a particular telephone call. Such things may seem important to us in our daily experience, but what is really important at the most fundamental level is the passing on of genetic material to a succeeding generation, and then another and another. In this way, immortality is achieved on the scale of the gene, which to nature is the only scale that really matters. We may think that our genes are attributes of our individual human identities, but according to but according to Dawkins, it is we who are appendages of our genes. We are simply vehicles for transporting them as far as possible into the future, which is where life desperately wants them to go. And why does life want them to go there? While science chooses not to discuss the overriding direction or purpose of immortality, Kabbalah teaches that this is exactly what makes life meaningful and intelligible. Each of us is the bearer of sparks of energy from an unimaginably ancient source. That is, we are all the inheritors of Adam's soul, which fragmented through time and space at the instant of the fall. Our bodies, our emotions, and our thoughts are all shared of the shattered primordial vessel, personified by Adam and Eve in the Genesis narrative. As the Zohar discusses, when Adam and Eve conceived children after the expulsion from the garden, their offspring were born from the side of the evil inclination. They were subject to biological death, but where science recognizes no spiritual purpose in this process, Kabbalah sees it as a continuing reprise and correction of the original fall. Kabbalah sees not just a happy ending, but an end to the very idea of ending, and a return to the infinite tree of life reality ordained for us by the Creator. Alright, family, that's it for chapter 25, the chapter on immortality. Matter of fact, so I wonder if anyone noticed as we read this, and now I see why my mom has told me to go back and reread this, because I read it the one time. The one time somewhere at the beginning of this year. And as I'm reading it again, if anybody who's listening to me read this has also listened to me as I've gone through reading these two books, you should have noticed the similarities in the information compared to this, especially when it talks about, you know, us ascending, and it talks about how, like I say, each one teach one. You know, others make the way for others to ascend. Like the masters or star seeds, or people who are more spiritually elevated, actually help others who aren't elevated as them ascend. So they don't have to do as much work as we do to find the knowledge, to search. They don't have to go through as much suffering as us. Yes, you still have to go through suffering if you follow the Creator, if you choose with all your heart, but not as much as the man. Like remember what Yahusha said. Take up your cross. You know, Yahusha said that we don't have to. We're not gonna be asked to make the same sacrifice as Yahusha. Yahusha was the only one who was supposed to do that sacrifice. In other words, he did it for us. He made the sacrifice for us so that we can move forward in ascension. And this is essentially what this is explaining right now. It was also explaining how, like I've been saying for a minute, family, if you don't take the time to read, to study, to search, to meditate, you know, to line upon line, precept upon precept, your mind, your consciousness isn't going to expand. You have to read, you have to study for your consciousness to expand, so that the immortality reality can be received back into your spirit. This is telling the truth, family. It's basically saying, once you truly realize, like, it's okay. Let me say it like this, family. This is why I don't go around and I don't try to force people to believe what I believe. Yes, maybe sometimes it might seem like I'm pushy, but that's just because how I am. I'm really excited about things I read. I'm very passionate. But you won't see me going around and saying, you have to be this to get saved. You have to be a Christian. You better be a Jew. You better join Islam. I don't tell y'all to join anything. Only thing I tell y'all to do is read and study. That's it. But once again, this has to come from your free will. And I forgot what I was saying, fam. I'm not gonna lie. Oh yeah, like I always say, there's a difference between there's a difference between someone just telling you the answer and then you naturally coming to that answer yourself by your own work. Because if I just tell you the answer, you'll be like, okay. And then eventually it'll just, you know, go in one ear and out the other. Like you'll probably forget about it. It's not going to make much sense. But if you take the time to study, you know, study to make yourself approved, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, pray, fast, ask the Creator, be patient with yourself. Eventually that answer will come to you and it'll be better and it'll make more sense, and it'll take effect not only within your spirit, your conscience, your mind, but also within your physical body. But you have to come to that understanding yourself. It's not always just as easy as someone telling you. It has to agree with your spirit. Like I get comments about people disagreeing with certain things I say, or they say, well, that's not true. Well, the only reason they can't understand what I'm saying, to be honest with you, is because what I said does not agree with their spirit. But if they put the work in themselves, if they take themselves out of the box, if they take themselves out of man-made organizations and trust in the Creator and go forth with the knowledge and continue to read and study, line upon, eventually the things I have said to them will make sense. But until you put that work in yourself, it's not going to agree with your spirit. What else was they talking about? I mean, there was quite a few things in here, family, but I'm going to be honest with you, I really don't want to go back and read it again. I don't feel like it. I'd rather just read something else. But those were important parts. But once again, I always say, family, a lot of these books, they're all connected, family. Also, it was talking about you got to be positive. We really have to work on being positive, family. We've been taught to be negative so long that we're actually, as they say, you are what you eat. You are who you hang out with. You are what you think you are. So you have to watch your thoughts. This is how we stop fearing death, family. We stop. It's not to say you go be dumb. Doesn't mean you stop being careful. Doesn't mean you do anything dumb. It just means, use your common sense in life. Don't be walking around all day thinking about doom and gloom, and you don't be worrying about I'm gonna pass away. Just what's the word say? It says, don't worry about things of tomorrow. Worry about things of today. Don't, you know what I'm saying? Don't think about the past. Don't think about the future. Just worry about now. Because the Creator has the rest. If the Creator protects flowers who are dressed so beautifully, arrayed so beautifully, flowers, beautiful flowers that are here today and gone tomorrow, how much more will the Creator take care of you, who has been here 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50, and on and on and on. We apparently, what I'm getting from this too is a lot of our growing old and stuff is really because of our own choices, because of things we do, because the constant negativity around it. It's like it's constantly causing us to age. It's causing sickness come upon our body to murk our avatar. We have to work on being positive, family. We truly have to work on this. We have to work on seeking higher knowledges. Like, anyway, family, look, I'm done. I'm gonna finish it right there. You know, thanks, moms, for cause I'm not gonna lie, she kept getting on me about this. She kept telling me, read it again. She's like, you need to read it, you need to read it, you need to read it, you need to read it. So there you go. I read it again. Alright, family. Without further ado, I'm a wise, wealthy, rich, celestial being that is loved by the Most High Creator. Alright, family, I'll catch you later. Be blessed. Shalom.